Fanatics, welcome back. I am using my logo pen. I had this in my store for all of 5 minutes before they all sold. If you're lucky enough to snag one, let me know. But yeah, I am back. I'm working on Some Days I Like This. Is in my store. It is by the gorgeous Hannah Lipsky, aka Iterations Crafts on Instagram. Very talented and amazing artist. There's a story to be told in every piece of her artwork. I do have a selection of her artwork, so please do go check that out at my store. The link is in the description box. So, my Fanatics. You know, I went missing off my true crime radar for a while. I got suckered into Supernatural, kind of binge watched that for a good couple of months, and you all missed my true crime. So I'm back. I'm in the deep dark hole of true crime once again, and 3 weeks in a row. This will be the third Sunday. How amazing is that? That's pretty cool. I'm glad to be back. I did also miss my true crime. I didn't realise how much until I got back into it. So, if you like true crime and you like diamond painting, please feel free to join here on my channel by clicking that subscribe button and the bell to be notified when I upload future videos. Along with my true crime, I do also go live on Mondays, where we get to hang out, work on our diamond paintings. I do my giveaways, and you get to see the new releases upcoming into my store, and so much more. It's a lot of fun on my Mondays. I love my Mondays. So yes, I do own a diamond painting company, and I would love for you to take a look. If anything jumps out at you, put it in your wish list or in your basket. I do ship worldwide at no extra cost, and I'm averaging round about 15 to 20 days from the date you order to the date you receive your kit. So, today's true crime. Let's get on with the reason you have tuned in, shall we? Today we are talking about the Black Widow. It is Dena Thompson. I thought we would cover a lady, if we can call her that. At this point in the true crime, I thought we could switch it up a little bit and talk about Dena Thompson. And okay, so grab whatever you are working on. Please let me know in the comment section what you are working on. I like to know these things. You know I do. So let's get into today's true crime. Dena was born Dena Holmes in 1960 in North London, a town of Hendon, to Michael and Margaret Holmes. Though she was raised in a lower middle class family, her upbringing was for the most part, air quote, normal. She showed no indication of abuse or neglect, and she excelled in school. So it's unclear how she developed her hatred for men. After high school, Dena got a job at the Halifax Building Society, where she worked as a teller. Sorry, I'll turn my ringer off. She was working there when she first met Lee Wyatt in 1982. Though their meeting was a blind date, they got along extremely well, and the two of them were married after dating for just 1 year. 5 years later, they had a son named Darren. Dena and Lee started a small business they called Dena Lee Crafts, a combination of their two names, in case you hadn't guessed, where they made and distributed small stuffed toys. Lee worked full-time for their toy business, while Dena worked part-time and kept a full-time job at the Woolwich Building Society. Though Lee was very passionate about the business and they hoped to make their fortune selling the toys, the idea just didn't take off the way they had hoped. While placing ads in the West Sussex Gazette for their toys, Dena met a young man named Julian Webb, who worked for the newspaper. Though Julian had no idea Dena was married, she had her first taste of infidelity and started an affair with him. It was becoming increasingly clear to Dena that the toy business was not going to bring her the riches she had hoped for. Lee eventually took a job at the local hotel, and Dena found an illegal money-making opportunity without letting her husband know. She began skimming money from the Woolwich Building Society. Over time, she pilfered the hefty sum of £26,000. Now that she had a little money of her own, Dena needed to get her husband out of the picture so she could continue her relationship with Julian. To her, the marriage had run its course. She had lost faith in Lee's ability to make her rich. Her next step was to concoct an elaborate scheme to get rid of him. Just 3 months after Dena and Lee had signed the mortgage papers on a new home in Yapton, West Sussex, she put her plan into motion. Dena told Lee that both the airline company Aer Lingus and the Walt Disney Corporation were interested in one of their toys called Shaun the Leprechaun. It would be a huge deal that would net the two of them several $1 million and set them up for life. Dena even forged a Disney letterhead to make her imaginary contract more believable to Lee. But there was a setback with that deal. According to Dena, the mafia had got wind of their deal with Disney and wanted in on it. If they didn't get their cut, they would eliminate them and their family. Amazingly, Lee bought all of Dena's lies and grew extremely paranoid that the mafia would come after them at any time. On the 30th of June in 1991, when a bill collector showed up at the front door, Dena told Lee that it was the mafia at the door and he would need to run out the back door and go into hiding. Using an unbelievable web of lies, Dena convinced Lee to go into hiding in the small seaside town of Nuki. She somehow convinced him to leave phone messages and write letters to her implicating himself in the fraud that she had committed in the Woolwich Building Society. She said it was the only way to throw off the, quote, G-men, the fictional name she came up with for the mafia, and she would let him know when the whole thing had blown over and the deal with Disney had finally gone through. Of course, the deal with Disney was a lie, and Lee spent the next 3 years of his life living in poverty and fearing for his life. He managed to find work at an amusement arcade under an assumed name of Colin Mitchell, but sent almost everything he earned back to his wife, thinking it would all be over soon and he would be a multi-millionaire at home with his wife. Lee had no idea that just 6 months after he ran out the back door of their home, Dena had married another man, Julian Webb. Dena was now married to 2 men, making her a bigamist. Dena's neighbours were confused when they saw wedding cards in the front window of their home and Julian moving in. They had no idea what happened to Lee, but they were even more confused when, just after the wedding, they saw other men coming into the home and Dena kissing them on the doorstep. The stream of mysterious male visitors was constant. It wasn't long before the Woolwich Building Society caught on to her embezzlement. She was being threatened with termination and prosecution if she didn't return the money. Dena made up another elaborate story for her new husband, Julian. She told him they wanted to fire her because she had developed a terminal illness and had taken too many days off work. Julian eventually heard about the missing £26,000, but Dena explained that it was her first husband, Lee, that had actually stolen the money. She told Julian that Lee was a violent man who had returned to Yapton and was sending her threatening letters and phone calls. She even claimed Lee had broken into the home and had stalked, assaulted and raped her. She convinced the police to have an injunction put out against Lee, banning him from his own home. Lee now thought both the mafia and the police were looking for him and showed up at the home while Julian was upstairs asleep. Dena managed to turn him away, but she now knew it was only a matter of time before her lies would be found out. The hammer was coming down quickly on Dena, and she needed to act fast. She was terrified that Lee would come home and expose her bigamist marriage, and she was also being taken to court for the missing £26,000. June 30th, 1994 was Julian's 31st birthday, and his mother called their home to wish him a happy birthday. Dena answered the phone and explained to his mother that Julian had been sick for the past 2 days and couldn't speak on the phone. She said that he had been out in the sun too long and had drunk too much alcohol. Julian's mother knew something was wrong because Julian was an avid bodybuilder, religiously working out 3 days a week at the gym, watching everything he consumed, and didn't drink much alcohol at all. He also wasn't the type to spend much time in the sun. That evening, Dena made Julian a large plate of hot curry, his favourite dish. He thought of it as a challenge to eat the hottest curry he could possibly stand and encouraged her to make it hot. Dena seized the opportunity. The next morning at 1 a.m, Dena called the ambulance when she found that Julian was unresponsive. Julian died from an overdose of dothepin. I'm probably not saying that right. It's an antidepressant and aspirin. Dena had spiked the curry with a massive dose. Dena told the police that Julian had been depressed and had committed suicide. The coroner recorded an open verdict, meaning there was insufficient evidence that Julian had died of a suicide. The Sussex police also determined that there was no proof that the death was suspicious. The investigation was therefore closed. Early the following morning, Dena was dressed in her nightgown underneath an overcoat, anxiously awaiting on the steps of the West Sussex Gazette, where Julian had worked. She was waiting for the manager to get to work. Just hours after her husband was pronounced dead, she stated this to his manager, quote, "Julian's dead. I need to speak to the advertising manager about the insurance money," end quote. Dena was wasting no time and was hoping to collect on Julian's £35,000 pension plan he had through his employer. While waiting for his pension money to arrive, Dena was livid to find out that Julian's mother had stepped in. His mother was able to prove that Dena was not eligible for the pension because she was not actually next of kin. She pointed out that Dena was still legally married to Lee Wyatt, her first husband. Dena's attempts to have Julian's body cremated were also foiled by his mother, who insisted on a burial. This move would later come into play when the body would need to be exhumed. Spoiler. Out of spite, Dena wore a revealing black leather miniskirt and low-cut blouse to Julian's funeral and waved to the family as she left. It seemed that Dena may have got away with murder. Lee was still on the run, and Dena found herself alone again. The stream of men coming to and from the house continued. One of those men, Robert Waite, had known Dena years earlier, just after high school. He received a card in the mail from her inviting him to a reunion party. When he called, Dena invited him out for dinner. During dinner, Dena tried a news story on her latest victim. She told Robert that her late husband was a bodybuilder and had died of an overdose of steroids. She also told him she was dying of a terminal illness and only had months to live. She said it was her dream to go to Florida before she died, knowing that Robert would offer to make her wish come true. Just as she planned, Robert fell for her trap. While on their trip to Florida, Robert woke in the hotel room in a daze and felt a sharp prick in his side. He was sure that someone had drugged him, as he remembered nothing from the previous day. Out of the blue, Dena suddenly told him that she needed to leave. She had to fly up to New York to testify in a trial against the mafia. The truth was that she flew back to the UK to appear in court for the fraud she had committed against the Woolwich Building Society. Dena left Robert stranded in Florida for 3 weeks with no money and no way home. Robert was eventually arrested and deported back to Britain. On August 31st in 1995, when Robert returned to the UK, he went to Dena's home to find out what happened to her. That's when he found out they had convicted her of stealing £26,000 from the Woolwich Building Society. Dena had created a fake identity of a woman named Christina Duke and used that identity to transfer money into an account at the Woolwich Building Society. She would then withdraw the money for herself. During the trial, police discovered that Dena had scripted the phone calls, threats and letters from Lee Wyatt specifically to incriminate him. She had coerced him into believing that he had to do this to protect his family. Dena's accusations of rape and abuse were also lies. Police discovered that Lee was actually hundreds of miles away in Newquay, living in poverty under an assumed name at the time she was claiming the assaults. Dena was sentenced to 18 months in prison for her crimes, but only served 9 months of her sentence and returned home in Yapton. The stream of men at Dena's door started again as soon as she arrived. She was attracting the men from ads she had placed in the Lonely Hearts columns. Richard Thompson was one of them. In her ad, Dena described herself as a bubbly blonde, and within just a few months of dating, she and Richard got married in a spur-of-the-moment wedding while on a trip to Florida because she had to go back. I probably would have picked somewhere else, but okay. Dena told her new husband that she had won the lottery but could only access the money from the United States. So the two of them made plans to immigrate. She encouraged Richard to retire from his job and cash out his pension. Then they would combine their assets before they leave. Richard had no reason not to believe her. She lured him with the prospect of owning his own fishing company in Florida after she had received her lottery win. In January 2000, after only a little more than a year of marriage, Dena told Richard that a lawyer would show up with their US green cards and they could leave for their new life. But first, she had a surprise for him. She was feeling adventurous and wanted a bit of bondage to celebrate the event. Oh dear, this is going to go horribly wrong. Dena locked their German Shepherd in another room and told her husband to lie on the floor. She ran a hot bath and tied his hands behind his back, taped his ankles together and put a towel over his face. Richard thought he would be getting something really kinky. What he really got was an aluminium baseball bat to the head. Richard was bleeding profusely, but was still conscious and trying desperately to untie himself. After struggling, he was able to untie himself, but by that time she was stabbing him with a kitchen knife. Unable to see from all the blood pouring down his face, Richard reached for her face and pressed his thumbs into her eyes. Quote, "You let go of the knife or I'm gonna put your eye through your head," end quote, said Richard. When it was over, Dena had already cleaned out his bank account, contacted his life insurance companies about selling his £89,000 policy, and had spoken to a real estate agent about putting up his house for sale. Dena pleaded not guilty when she was arrested for the attempted murder of her third husband, Richard Thompson. She told the court that Richard had flown into a rage when she told him that her story about moving to the United States was all a big lie. She claimed she acted in self-defense and that Richard was the real criminal. On August the 17th, 2000, Dena convinced the jury that she was innocent and was acquitted of the attempted murder. She did, however, admit to 15 counts of deception against Richard and her former lovers. For these crimes, she was found guilty and sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison. While the whole ordeal with Richard, however, prompted Sussex police to take a closer look at Dena's life. When they saw the way she had taken advantage of all of her boyfriends and husbands, they reopened the case of the death of Julian Webb. With the family's approval, his body was exhumed, but the examination provided no new evidence. Police then looked into the various accounts she had given for the night of Julian's death. In a written statement to police, she claimed that she couldn't accurately recall what happened that night. She told some people that Julian hadn't eaten in days, while she told others he had just eaten a hot curry. police charged her with Julian's murder. In December 2003, Dena Thompson went on trial for the murder of her second husband, Julian Webb. She was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment with the minimum sentence of 16 years. After Dena Thompson's conviction, investigators teamed with Interpol to look at all of her past lovers. They were worried that she may have killed more. Their investigations took them to Bulgaria, where Dena had done much travelling in her late teens and early 20s. One boyfriend in particular, Stoyan Kostovav, a Bulgarian native, had been reported missing and has never been found. Update. On the 23rd of May 2022, Dena Thompson was granted parole and subsequently released from prison. Quote, after considering the circumstances of her offending, the progress made while in custody, and the other evidence presented at the hearing, the panel was satisfied that Miss Thompson was suitable for release once suitable accommodation became available in early June 2022. End quote. The terms of her release require her to alert authorities of any new relationship with men. She's not going to do that. As well as have her vehicle's passport and bank details monitored during her parole. She was also required to adhere to a curfew and wear a monitoring device at all times. Upon hearing the news of her parole, Richard Thompson expressed his disbelief to the newspapers. Quote, she definitely tried to kill me, and they proved that she murdered her second husband. She would have been a serial killer if she had been successful. God knows what else she's done. Well, there you go. Dena Thompson. Another douchebag. Another depraved individual. And, yeah. How horrific. And as horrific as it was for Richard Thompson, I'm thankful he survived, because he's right, she would have been a serial killer, and that's pretty scary. He must be like all kinds of tormented by what she did and what she put him through. And I wonder whatever happened to Lee. It doesn't really say whatever happened to Lee. That would have been interesting. I did look online to see if I could find any information on Lee or on Richard and how he's doing. I was unsuccessful in looking at that. And I understand they want their privacy and don't want to be associated with this douchebag, as I call my true crime people. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Please do leave your comments down below. If there's anyone you want me to talk about next time, let me know. But yeah, I have now finished this painting, and look how awesome it is. Yep. A very passionate piece from Hannah that I think resonates with a whole bunch of us, and it is available in my store. The store is linked down below. Some days are like this. So have an awesome week. I will see you on live Monday at 8 p.m. where we will catch up, chit chat, and you can give me your thoughts again on what you think of Dena Thompson. Yeah. Stay safe out there. Bye.